Welcome to the 2023 Oscar preview show as presented by the Yay, Nay or Meh channel. This is a series of videos where I will be analysing the above the line categories at the 2023 Oscars. Even though I've been podcasting and reviewing films for over a decade now, I still consider myself an enthusiastic amateur rather than an expert. I didn't go to film school, I don't really have the training in it. This is the reason why I only do the major categories, because I honestly don't think I can give a value judgment as to what the best editing is, what the best production design is. But I do believe I can give value judgments about the best acting, the best directing, the best writing, and the best film. So that is why I only do the major categories. And I analyse the Oscars in a slightly different way than most people, because I spend almost as much time discussing what I think should have been nominated rather than what was nominated, and only limiting myself to that. And as such, these videos and in past years audio podcasts do get rather long. So what I've decided to do is split these reviews up into separate videos, and there will be one video for each category, where I will be discussing what I think will win, what I think should win, whether there were any snubs, and if there were any snubs, whether I personally think they should actually have won the Oscar. And in a couple of places I've gone really left field with what I think should win the Oscar. So this is going to be a long process. I mean, at the time of recording, it's less than a week away from the actual Oscar ceremony. So I need to be efficient and I need to be fast. And as such, I'm going to be reusing a lot of the same videos. This introduction I'm recording now will be on each of these videos. I mean, I need to introduce each of the videos in case you come across them individually. So I may as well just record one introduction and use it in each of the videos. And if you watch more than one of these, you'll be seeing this a lot. And as such, there will be a time code in the comments to tell you when the actual content starts. And when I will be talking about the same film in different categories, I'll also be reusing that video as well. So you will be seeing some repeats, but again, you can check in the time codes. And with such a vast project, you need a starting point. In certain categories, there is a shortlist. In both the documentary feature and the international feature categories, the Academy publishes a 15-film long list. And in the animated feature category, they publish a list of eligible films. And this year, there were 27 eligible animated features. But other than those categories with a specific list, the starting point that I use is the lists that are published on goldderby.com, which is basically the industry standard for this kind of Oscar preview and prediction. So if a performance or a film was listed on the Gold Derby lists of Oscar potential, there was a chance, however remote, that a performance or a film did have a chance at the Oscars. And that is the list I will be using, with a couple of tweaks which will come up during some of these videos. So that is my starting point, and if it wasn't published on goldderby.com, it's not going to be under consideration. And this has already gone on for far too long, so let's get on with this categories analysis.
Best Film. Nominee.
It's often the case that an international feature, not in the English language, makes it all the way to a nomination for Best Picture. And therefore it is blindingly obvious what is going to win Best International Feature. this has happened over recent years with the Japanese film Drive My Car, the Korean film Parasite, which of course won Best Picture as well, and also the Mexican film Roma. And this year, that honour goes to this German film All Quiet on the Western Front. So it was blindingly obvious what would win the international feature competition even before, astonishingly, this film won the BAFTA, not only for Best Film not in the English language, but also Best Film. What? Because I'm on record as saying that I am not the hugest fan of All Quiet on the Western Front. Yes, it is an emotionally powerful film, but in my opinion, Edward Berger over-directs the film. I think it's too stylised for its own good. Yes, it has the emotional power. Very good acting. I think Felix Camera, the leading actor, is excellent, and I'm going to give him an honourable mention as Best Actor. But I think what Edward Berger has done with this 2022 version of All Quiet on the Western Front is turned one of the greatest anti-war novels, and arguably also one of the greatest anti-war films, the Oscar-winning 1930 version of All Quiet on the Western Front. He's turned that project into just another war movie. Or at least that's how I felt about it. I mean, I understand why people have connected with it. I understand why people are going to praise us and it is going to win Best International Feature, but it just didn't grab me. I'm sorry, it didn't. And there are other international features which I will be talking about in both Best Picture and Best International Feature. It just doesn't do it for me. So yeah, I don't think it should have got nominated in any of the three above the line categories it got in Best International Feature, Best Feature, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Didn't make the cut of any of my personal nominees. But in each case, I mean, it's a good film. I just didn't love it the way that most people do. So, All Quiet on the Western Front in Best Picture, Best International Feature, and Best Adapted Screenplay. It's just a meh.
Best Film. Nominee.
Times change, but sometimes directors don't. When Avatar came out in 2009, it was genuinely revolutionary. The world building, the look, the feel of the film was so monumentally impressive. Pioneering the use of 3D, which at time of recording looks like a bit of a false dawn, to be honest, but it was astonishing, it was jaw-dropping, it was amazing. But then everybody started doing it. How many films have we seen over the past few years that are just pixels smashing into each other? I mean, the Marvel Cinematic Universe is withering and dying on the vine, but it's lots of pixels. I mean, the CG imagery, the visual effects, even though they're getting increasingly ropey, but everybody can do it and everybody does do it. So why are we now paying attention to Avatar again? Did we need another sequel? And James Cameron, who, for good or ill, is a very flamboyant director. I mean, he has his own sensibilities and he uses them. And I would kind of like to see James Cameron do something else, but he's now committed himself to another 3 of these Avatar movies. Do we need 3 more Avatar movies? I certainly don't. And to give it an Oscar nomination for Best Picture? Really? This film, this version of pixels smashing into each other is Oscar-worthy? Is it really? No, it isn't. Yes, I mean, this is better CG than most of its competitors. I mean, Black Adam, for example, was just meh. Thor Love and Thunder, I mean, so much ropey CGI. So yes, the quality of the CGI is better, but it is just CGI. It is just pixels smashing into each other. And the story still isn't great. I mean, the first Avatar was Pocahontas meets Dances with Wolves, meets Fern Gully, and the sequel isn't much better. I mean, it's flat, it's generic, it doesn't work. Why is this an Oscar nominee? I don't think it deserves it. So for me, Avatar: The Way of Water for Best Picture is a nay.
Best Film Nominee.
Martin McDonagh creates worlds which are morally complex and morally ambiguous, and also absurdly and blackly funny. And that is exactly what he did in The Banshees of Inisherin. This is a strange film in a lot of ways, but it is weirdly entertaining and weirdly funny. I mean, brilliantly acted all around from all the cast, which is probably going to get some Oscars, but it seems to be a tussle between The Banshees of Inisherin and Everything Everywhere All at Once for the major categories. It looked like The Fabelmans was also going to be in that mix, but I think that's less likely now. And I think the reflection of what might happen at the Oscars is in the precursor awards, the BAFTAs and the Golden Globes. Banshees of Inisherin won Best Comedy or Musical at the Golden Globes and won Best British Film at the BAFTAs, so in neither case did it win the big one. But in both cases it did win Best Screenplay. And I think that's going to be reflected in the Oscars. I don't think Banshees of Inisherin will win Best Picture, but I do think it will win Best Original Screenplay. It won't be my personal choice for Best Original Screenplay, but I think it will win. And if it does win, it will be deserving, because I really did like The Banshees of Inisherin. And despite its oddness, I mean, it's fair to say that The Banshees of Inisherin is strange, but it works, and it does have that strange, melancholy, but funny, but weird kind of vibe to it. I mean, the basic premise is just so absurd that you really don't know what to do with it, as the characters don't know what to do with it. So yeah, I think The Banshees of Inisherin will win Best Original Screenplay, even though it won't be my personal choice. And for both Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay, The Banshees of Inisherin is a yay.
Best Film Nominee.
Baz Luhrmann's gonna Baz Luhrmann. In a lot of ways, 2022 was the year of maximalist filmmaking, with Elvis, with Babylon, with Bardo, with RRR, all of these huge, exuberant films. And Elvis was definitely amongst them, as Baz Luhrmann has so often done in the past. I think the world needs people like Baz Luhrmann, and when somebody like that takes on an iconic figure like Elvis, things are going to happen. And they certainly did in the film Elvis. It's very long, it's very epic, it's very experimental. I mean, the filmmaking style itself is very noticeable. But it works. It's huge, it's exuberant, it's wild, it's fun. I think Austin Butler is probably going to win Best Actor, and personally speaking, I think Tom Hanks as Colonel Tom Parker should have got a lot more attention as well. I mean, yes, it's a very flamboyant performance, but I think it's a good performance from Tom Hanks. I can't remember the last time I saw, if I've ever seen, Tom Hanks give a bad performance. But Elvis is vast. It's big. It's big in so many different ways, and it works. And I'm glad that a filmmaker like Baz Luhrmann and a film like Elvis can get so much attention at the Oscars, because, yeah, this is fun. It's epic, it's big, and yeah, I think it deserves its Oscar nomination for Best Picture. So for me, Elvis is a yay.
Best Film. Nominee.
I have a question about the Fabelmans. If we didn't know this was an autobiography, and if we didn't know that it was an autobiography of Steven Spielberg, would anybody give a shit? I don't think so. This is a film of nostalgia. It's a film of establishing a great filmmaker. We have this story of this young boy who grows up and gets obsessed with filmmaking, gets obsessed with the process, and while he's at it, accidentally figures out that his mother's having an affair. And is there anything else here? I don't think there is. Apart from anything else, this film doesn't have an ending. Yes, the final camera move is kind of cute and nicely done. But if this wasn't an autobiography, and if it wasn't Steven Spielberg's autobiography, would he be allowed to get away with that ending? Or that non-ending? I don't think he would. I mean, the performances are okay. I mean, I don't think Michelle Williams or Judd Hirsch deserve their Oscar nominations. But really, this is an Oscar-worthy film, and at least in the early running was considered a genuine contender to win the Oscar. Really? We love Steven Spielberg that much that this film is going to get him another Oscar? Really? I say no. I mean, it's perfectly fine. It's so small. I mean, Steven Spielberg is possibly one of the greatest living filmmakers out there. He is a master of his craft, and there is some really, really good filmmaking here. But in service of what? I just don't think The Fabelmans is that interesting or that impressive. It's only because it's Steven Spielberg that it's got this much attention. So, yeah, it's perfectly fine. I don't think it deserves either of its nominations for Best Picture or Best Original Screenplay. So, yeah, for me, The Fabelmans is just meh.
Best Film. Nominee.
Oh, fucking Top Gun Maverick. Why? Oh, yeah, fine. It apparently saved the cinema in 2022. You know, people only went to the cinema to see this fucking movie. Is that enough to make it a Best Picture? And a Best Adapted Screenplay? Giving Top Gun Maverick Best Adapted Screenplay when you don't give The Whale Best Adapted Screenplay? I mean, yes, The Whale was very divisive, but still, Top Gun Maverick Adapted Screenplay? Adapted not only from the original Top Gun, but the second half of the movie is the trench run from Star Wars. Why is nobody shouting about this? They just ripped off the trench run from Star Wars, shoved it in a Tom Cruise movie, and it's Oscar-worthy? No! This is testosterone-drenched, badass cinema bullshit. We stopped making movies like this 20, 30 years ago for a good reason. There's nothing impressive here. There's nothing original here. It doesn't really address the way that things have changed, and when it does it in dismissive terms. I mean, there's a scene towards the beginning of the film where, I can never remember if it's Ed Harris or Ed O'Neill. I think it's Ed Harris. He plays an admiral, and he says, You doing this Mach 10 fighter pilots. I mean, manned aircraft are a thing of the past. The future is drones. Which is right. I mean, there's lots of stuff about drones, but unmanned aircraft are the way of the future. In so many ways, Tom Cruise is a dinosaur, and this movie is a dinosaur. The fact that there's a scene where Miles Teller and Glenn Powell are in a bar and preening and just butting heads and dripping in testosterone to impress a woman. I mean, yes, nowadays, because it's 2022, the woman's also a fighter pilot, but they're still doing it. They're still butting heads because they're so goddamn macho. We don't need this anymore. Okay, right. I think we do kind of need this. We need films like Top Gun Maverick, like the Fast and the Furious franchise, like Bond, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We need those kinds of films. There is a place for them. There is a time for them. We do need them. We do need the cinema to survive. But in Oscar terms, we do not need this movie. So no, this should not have got a Best Picture nomination. It definitely should not have got a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination, particularly over The Whale. And in both of those categories for me, Top Gun Maverick is a resounding nay.
Best Film Nominee.
There are certain directors I just don't get. They have enormous international profile. Everybody says, oh, this is the genius best movie making ever. And I watch the films and I think, no, that's not my thing. And Ruben Östlund is definitely one of those directors. His last 3 films have all won major awards at Cannes, including this one, Triangle of Sadness. And I just don't get it. Maybe it's my personal taste. I mean, Ruben Östlund very often deals with a sense of awkward humour, which is just not my thing. I mean, I've never liked to watch The Office. That kind of cringe humour just doesn't do it for me. So maybe, well, that almost certainly has something to do with it. But even so, I just don't get the praise that Ruben Östlund has. Triangle of Sadness is a film which does have points to make, but it makes them in such a blunt and an obvious way, and in occasionally a grotesque way. I mean, the extended scene where everybody's vomiting. Yeah, really? Yeah, I mean, performances. I mean, yes, Dolly De Leon, the Filipino cleaner, was getting legitimate Oscar buzz for Best Supporting Actress, which I understand. Didn't make my cut. But as a film, as a directing performance, I just don't think this cuts the mustard. It is making relatively vapid, relatively understated points in very flamboyant ways, and I just don't think it works well enough. So, no. In all of the major categories that Triangle of Sadness got nominated in, Best Picture, Best Director for Ruben Östlund, and Best Original Screenplay, again for Ruben Östlund, I just don't think Triangle of Sadness deserves it. And for me, in every category, it is a nay.
Best Film Nominee.
Women Talking is the type of film that sometimes doesn't manage to get through in award season because it does what it says on the tin. It's about women and it's a very, very talky movie. It's also directed by a woman. And I think Sarah Polley can feel somewhat hard done by in not getting a Best Director nomination in an all-male field. At the end of the day, Women Talking only got 2 nominations, although one of them was for Best Picture. And I think the other one, Best Adapted Screenplay, Women Talking is actually going to win, and it's going to deserve to win. Adapted from the novel by Miriam, I'm not sure if it's Toews or Taves, could be either, but having this film, which is almost exclusively a group of about 10 women, just talking with each other and discussing their problems, discussing their issues, discussing the systemic sexual abuse that they've been subjected to for decades, and maybe trying to do something about it. I mean, this is another film which is very much set in a post-Me Too world, or at least greenlit and produced and made in a post-Me Too world. And there's power there. I mean, these different women with their different approaches and their different reasons for doing the things they're doing and suggesting the things they are doing. I mean, the dialogue is so great in this, I mean, all the different perspectives. I think one of the problems why it did get more Oscar nominations is it split the vote. I mean, there was too many great female performances to vote for. I mean, Rooney Mara, Jessie Buckley, Claire Foy, Ben Whishaw as the only man in the film. I think they split the vote, and this is, I think, a great demonstration as to why the Oscars needs a Best Ensemble category, but that's another discussion for another day. But the way this film progresses, the way it film presents itself, very much dealing with the psychology, very much dealing with the dialogue. But also when you do go outside, you have the sun-dappled cinematography of this rural Canadian Mennonite community. And it's beautiful. So it's beautiful, it's well acted, the script is extremely good. And I think it deserves more attention than it got. I mean, I think it's going to win Best Adapted Screenplay and is going to deserve winning Best Adapted Screenplay. Although not my personal choice for that particular category. But yeah, Women Talking is a very impressive film. And for both Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay, it is a definite yay.
Best Film. Snubbed.
There were several films this year which turned out to be very divisive. And one of them was definitely Babylon. In the early running, it was considered a strong contender, maybe even a winner for Best Picture. But it ended up getting not very many Oscar nominations and nothing above the line. It got Best Production Design, Best Costume Design, and Best Score, all of which it actually has a reasonably strong chance of winning, but it got nothing above the line. And it also got mixed reviews, to be generous. But I have to tell you, I fucking loved Babylon. Yes, it's sprawling, it's gigantic. Frankly, it's a mess. But it's also wildly entertaining. And what I didn't realise fully when I sat down to watch Babylon is just how funny it would be. Throughout the film, it has a sense of wry, extravagant humour, which really works. I mean, the Hello College scene is one of the most hysterically funny single scenes I think I've seen in years. In terms of a film about Hollywood, it's right up there with Would That It Were So Simple from Hail Caesar. That scene alone is genius. But the whole film is, in my opinion, very, very impressive, showing the hedonism and the debauchery of 1920s Hollywood. I mean, the scene at the beginning of the film, I can't remember ever seeing quite so many naked and semi-naked people in one place. That was a sight. But it does have a point. I mean, showing the absolute abandon with which early Hollywood functioned and the types of environments that a ingenue like Margot Robbie, and to a lesser degree Diego Calva, goes into this 1920s Hollywood. That's the system they're going into. And showing the high highs in more ways than one, as well as the crashing lows. And yes, there is great joy and great hedonism, but there is a come down. There must be a come down. And that shows everything about that rise and fall. I mean, it's a classic narrative. Quite honestly, I don't really like quite how far Brad Pitt's character falls, but other than that one quibble, I really, really like Babylon, and I do think it deserved a nomination for Best Picture. I also gave Damien Chazelle honourable mentions in both the directing and original screenplay categories, but yeah, Babylon, I think, is huge, extravagant, wild, and I also think it's really, really entertaining. So for me, Babylon is a yay.
Best Film. Snubbed.
The non-English language film that everybody is paying attention to and everybody is heaping praise upon is All Quiet on the Western Front, which is going to win Best International Feature. I mean, there's just not a contest. The non-English language film that everybody should be paying attention to is the Belgian film Close. This is a film directed by Lucas de Hont, whose first film, Girl, also got a lot of international attention. But honestly, I wasn't the hugest fan. Well, I really, really liked Girl until the last few scenes. The final idea that Girl leaves you with, I strongly object to. But he was definitely a director to watch. And then he came out with this film Close, which follows the story of two teenage boys who are transitioning between junior school and senior school. They have grown up together as close as brothers, they're neighbours on a flower farm. Or I think, well, at least one of them owns a flower farm in the French-speaking part of Belgium. And they not only spend the night at each other's house, it's not uncommon to spend entire weekends at the other's house, even sharing the same bed. But when a half curious and half teasing question comes up from one of the girls in their class, are you together? One of the boys, brilliantly played by Eden Dambray, rejects this idea wholeheartedly and separates himself from his best friend, joins the local ice hockey team, starts hanging out with the boys who play football and discussing endlessly who's better, Kylian Mbappe or Lionel Messi, and completely rejecting his old friend simply because of the suggestion that they might be intimate with each other. And this has consequences, and the end of this film does have its very melancholy moments. And all of this is brilliantly executed by Lucas de Hont. As both director and screenwriter, he manages to fill this film with such subtlety, with such grace. In a year where so much of the discussion, so many of the films have been this maximalist approach, Here we have a quiet, intimate film, which is so much about body language, so much about silence, but we see everything going on. And honestly, I think Lucas de Hont deserves Oscar nominations in both the Best Director and the Best Original Screenplay categories. I think this is an exceptional piece of work. And Eden Dambreen, this kid, is so impressive. I mean, he was 15 years old or so when he shot this film. And I was just blown away by how good he was. And if you watch more of these videos, you will be hearing more about Eden Dambreen. But yeah, Lucas de Hont as director, as writer, I think deserves Oscar nominations. I think this should win the International Feature Oscar this year. And I also think it should be nominated for Best Picture. I really do think this is the type of film that needs to be more in the discussion when it comes to a Best Picture win. So yeah, for me, Close deserves a boatload of extra Oscar nominations, and it's definitely a yeah.
Best Film. Snubbed.
Living definitely deserves its nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. Written by the legendary novelist Katsuo Ishiguro, who did Remains of the Day. What? But anyway, adapted and being a remake of the Akira Kurosawa film Ikiru, and starring Bill Nighy in an Oscar-nominated turn. This is a beautiful, poetic film about fatalism, about regret, about life, about living. This is poetic, it's beautiful. It's really, really impressive. Unfortunately, I don't think it can stand up to its original, Ikiru, which in my opinion is an absolute masterpiece. Ikiru is just so beautiful. The funeral scene in Ikiru is one of the best written things I think I've ever seen. And I don't think anything in Living quite lives up to that. But just because you pale in comparison to an all-time classic, which is on the Sight and Sound Top 250 list, doesn't mean you aren't a worthy and a brilliant and a poetic film. Living is an examination of the British character, as the original Ikiru was an examination of the Japanese character. But Living has that stiff upper lip mentality, that don't make a fuss mentality, which is so expertly portrayed by Bill Nighy. It's a really, really impressive piece of work, and yes, it fully deserves its nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay. And I think it should have got a Best Picture nod as well. I think this kind of subtlety and reflection doesn't always do well in a big category like Best Picture. But in my opinion, Living definitely deserved a Best Picture nomination as well. So yeah, Living is a yay.
Best Film. Snubbed.
When I watched the announcement of the Oscar nominations and tried to do a reaction video to it, which didn't entirely work, but the two things which utterly shocked me was Daniel Deadwyler not getting a Best Supporting Actress nomination and The Whale not getting a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination. I just couldn't conceive of a world in which The Whale didn't get that screenplay nomination. At the time, I didn't realise just how divisive The Whale had turned out to be, with a lot of people talking about the fat shaming going on and Brendan Fraser wearing the fat suit and having the sound of constantly eating and slobbering and all that kind of stuff. and the disgust which is shown by the filmmaker Darren Aronofsky to his character. I didn't know all that was going on. When I saw The Whale, I thought it was beautiful, it was poetic. I mean, yes, grotesque, but designed to be grotesque. And the physical representation of the body of Brendan Fraser being a mirror for his grief, for his turmoil. I mean, he is slowly and deliberately killing himself. And that is what I took out of The Whale. Out of the screenplay written by Samuel D. Hunter, who wrote the original play, I found a reflection of grief, a reflection of regret. The interactions that Brendan Fraser has with his daughter Sadie Sink, with his friend and nurse Hong Chow. The melancholy of that, the grace of that, I found it immensely powerful, immensely moving. I can understand why people have taken against it. I can understand why the fat shaming aspects do upset people. I mean, as you can tell, I'm not the slimmest person, but I can kind of see where they're coming from. But I didn't take that out of The Whale, and I do think it not only deserved a nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay, I think it should win the category. I also think it should be a Best Picture nominee as well. And in my personal list, I'm giving it, out of the nominees, a Best Actor and Best Supporting Actress as well. So, yeah, I was very, very impressed with The Whale. I do understand and I do respect people taking so strongly against it. I didn't feel that. I think this is a film about grief. It's a film about fatalism and regret that I found immensely powerful and immensely well acted. So yeah, I think not only should The Whale have got nominations for both Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay, I also think it should have won Best Adapted Screenplay. And for me, The Whale is a yay.
Best Film. Snubbed.
I'm sure this happens to other people, but I often find myself championing films that nobody else is talking about, and in certain cases nobody else has even heard of. I mean, you should have heard of this film, but I'm not sure many people were paying attention to it and were giving it serious consideration at the Oscars. But I think The Wonder is an exceptional film. It has some really fascinating people behind the camera. It is directed by the Chilean director Sebastián Lelio, who brought us Gloria and its American remake Gloria Bell, the English language Jewish lesbian drama Disobedience, which was pretty good, and A Fantastic Woman. I think Sebastián Lelio is one of the most underrated directors out there. It's also written by Alice Birch, who in the feature film world brought us the excellent Lady Macbeth and Mothering Sunday, and on television brought us Normal People. And it's also adapting a novel by Emma Donoghue, who wrote the original novel that Room is based on as well. So lots of good people behind the camera. And yet nobody, I don't think, was seriously considering it for the Oscars. I am, because this is a great film about faith, about fatalism, about impotence, about the frustration of seeing something terrible happening in front of you and being utterly powerless to stop it because of faith. Maybe this has something to do with the fact that I'm a committed atheist, but a film about somebody, in this case a 19th century nurse, Florence Pugh, who I think deserves an honourable mention as Best Actress, But this 19th century English nurse is sent to Ireland to visit a girl who, it is claimed, has not eaten for something like 4 months. And this miracle needs to be dealt with, needs to be confirmed. Well, at least the Irish locals want it confirmed. Florence Pugh just wants to help this girl, and seemingly nothing can be done. And the psychology, the conversations that Florence Pugh has, I mean, this was a much more impressive performance from Florence Pugh than Don't Worry Darling, which turned into a behind-the-scenes train wreck. I mean, Don't Worry Darling was actually not bad, but, I mean, so much drama. But yeah, Florence Pugh in The Wonder is excellent. And having this story about faith and about the exploration of faith and the issues that come up when the environment in which you're in this case, rural Ireland in the 19th century, that is such an integral part of culture, of society, that you cannot fight against it, especially when you have your own problems. I mean, Florence Pugh does have demons of her own, and being sent to this isolated part of boggy Ireland, maybe not helping. So yeah, there's so much going on in The Wonder. I don't really like or understand the framing device that Sebastian Lelio put on. I mean, we start on a soundstage and a voiceover says, this is a film called The Wonder. So I don't quite know why he did that, but apart from that, the film is excellent. I think it deserves an honourable mention for Florence Pugh as Best Actress, an honourable mention for Alice Birch for Best Adapted Screenplay, and I do think The Wonder deserved a nomination for Best Picture. Yet nobody was talking about it. And for me, The Wonder is a yay.
Best Film will win.
The world loves an underdog. And there can't be many more real underdogs that have a real chance of getting a boatload of Oscars than Everything Everywhere All at Once. Made by a couple of guys who, up until this point, have been most famous for that Turn Down for What music video. They had a moderately successful debut feature film in Swiss Army Man, which was okay. And then they came out with this film, Everything Everywhere All at Once. And never has a film title been so accurate. This is a film which encompasses everything. It's a multiverse film, which is so much better than Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which came out within a couple of weeks of it. It's got these wild, exuberant, fantastical elements to it, with a fair sense of humour and absurdity and weirdness. It's a weird film and a complicated film in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it has a genuine emotional heart to it. Fundamentally, Everything Everywhere All at Once is about a mother-daughter relationship that needs to fix itself. And that just works so well. There's so much in this film, and I really like it. I mean, I think this is going to win the Oscar for Best Picture, and I think it's going to miss out for Best Original Screenplay. And I think it's going to deserve it. I mean, this is a brilliant film. It's not going to be my personal choice for Best Picture, but it's absolutely going to deserve the Oscars it's going to get. I really loved Everything Everywhere All at Once. It's another one of those maximalist type of films. And yeah, it's wild, exuberant, absurd, occasionally rather rude. But it's got such heart to it that, yeah, I really am one of those people who fell in love with Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I do hope it does win the Oscar, even though it won't be my personal choice. But Everything Everywhere All at Once is a definite yay.
Best film. Should win.
Every now and again, a film comes out that absolutely blindsides you. And Tar, for me, was one of those films. When I first saw it, I thought, okay, Cate Blanchett, great. But a film about a female conductor? Really? Well, this is getting so much praise, so much attention? But then I actually saw it, and similarly to Everything Everywhere All at Once, this is one of those films where everything is encompassed in this film. It's a film about power, it's a film about control and toxicity, very much in the post-Me Too movement, very much a film which, if it was about a man, it would be uncomfortable. But we've now reached the point where toxic women are also being portrayed on screen. I mean, last year there was the Spanish film Official Competition, where the character played by Penelope Cruz was troubling. And now we have Lydia Tarb, as played by Cate Blanchett, being that person, being somebody who uses people, being somebody who controls people, being somebody who needs that. Every single moment of her life is rigidly and carefully controlled until it isn't, until the dominoes start falling. And then writer-director Todd Field does some really interesting things. I mean, we see flashes of the collapse. We don't see the actual events happen. We just know that they are happening. I mean, for instance, Lydia Tarr opens the door and there's a boardroom full of people looking sternly at her. We don't see that meeting, but we can definitely work out what went on in that meeting. And all throughout the film, there are similar things that happen. The relationship between Cate Blanchett and her wife, Nina Hoss, is really interesting, and the level of exploitation and control that Lydia Tarr has. I mean, the heavy implication that this, on some level, was a marriage of convenience for Cate Blanchett is really well done. And yeah, I think Nina Hoss is also excellent and deserves an honourable mention for Best Supporting Actress. But yeah, this is a film which encompasses so much and does it in a reasonably minimalist way. I mean, as I said, not seeing everything that happens, but seeing just enough to imply what happens. I mean, Noémie Merland from the fantastic Portrait of a Lady on Fire, her last scene in this film sums up this film brilliantly, because we know something bad is going to happen in the future, but we never see it. We just see the consequences of it. And the way that Todd Field works it all together, the way that Cate Blanchett performs it, it's brilliant. I mean, like I said, I was blindsided by this film. I did not expect to respond to it as strongly as I did. And yet, I think this is an exceptional piece of work. I think this should win the Oscar for Best Picture. And out of the nominees, I also think it should win the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. I was that impressed with it, and I think this is the kind of landmark movie which people are going to be watching and pondering and analysing for years to come, because this is rich, this is dense, this is powerful, and it's brilliant. I think it should win at least 2 Oscars in these videos I'm going to be doing. So yeah, for me, Tar, in both the Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay category, is a yay. In the Best Picture category, the actual nominees are All Quiet on the Western Front, Avatar: The Way of Water, The Banshees of Inisherin, Elvis, Everything Everywhere All at Once, The Fabelmans, Tar, Top Gun Maverick, Triangle of Sadness, and Women Talking. My personal nominees would be Babylon, The Banshees of Inisherin, Close, Elvis, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Living, Tar, The Whale, Women Talking, and The Wonder. What I think will win the Oscar is Everything Everywhere All at Once, but my personal choice by a narrow margin would be Tar. And as I leave you with some honourable mentions in this category, which I think are worthy of note, a reminder that I have several more videos in this playlist which analyse different categories at the 2023 Oscars. You can check those out if you desire, even though if you watch enough of them you will have to skip some pieces of footage that I reused, including this closing statement. I am planning to do a reaction video to the Oscars themselves. I haven't quite figured out the technicals of that, but we'll have to see how that goes. And if you appreciate the kinds of things that I'm doing, I have an audio podcast, and I have various other things on this channel that you might want to check out. So you can like, comment, subscribe if you wish. And basically that's all I have for this particular video. So I'll see you next time, where I shine a light on cinema, both obvious and obscure.